I bet you all didn't know that Einstein benched 315 and deadlifted 500. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know why I start these episodes off with a lie, but it does come from a quote from Einstein. Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. That is the inspiration for this two-part episode. So in this episode, we are going to go over the variables that count and can be counted. And in the second part, or the next video, we are going to go over the things that can't be counted, but actually count towards your training and dieting success. So if you're interested in that, strap in and let's get to the episode. Okay, so starting us right off, what are the numbers that count? Now, this list isn't exhaustive, nor should it be, because I think that is the first issue. We try to quantify everything when we don't really need to quantify everything. The sort of 80-20 principle comes in here. What are the 20% of variables that are going to get me that 80% of results that I want to see in my training and nutrition and sort of, my physique outcomes? So the variables that I have outlined here, starting with number one, macronutrients and calories. So quantifying macronutrients and calories is going to be important for any phase of your training and your dieting. After you get past the sort of beginner stages and your newbie gains, knowing how much protein that you are getting in, knowing where your calories are at, are going to do the most for your physique. If you are trying to build muscle, you want to know if you're actually in a surplus. If you're not in a surplus and you're trying to build muscle, you're just kind of spinning your wheels. And if you're not taking in enough protein, then you're also not going to be building enough muscle. So that is the number one variable. So know your macronutrients, know your protein intake. Number two, your body weight trends from week to week, month to month, meso to meso, year over year. So if you are trying to build muscle and yet you are not weighing yourself and you don't know how much weight you are gaining, or if you're in a cutting phase and you don't know how much weight you're losing, you are not going to be very effective at manipulating your muscle mass. So if we are in a gaining phase and we are consistently gaining half a pound to a pound a week, wow, we're in a good surplus. Or similarly, if we're on the other end of the spectrum and we're cutting and we're losing 0.5% to 1% a week, awesome, fantastic. But if you are not monitoring your body weight trends week to week, and I say week to week because you should take averages, then how are you going to know for certain that you're actually changing what you want to change, what you look like, how much muscle mass you have, how much fat mass you have? So you're going to want to track that too. Number three, training volume. So as you progress, as you get past the beginner stages, you're going to need to begin accumulating more and more training volume, i.e. in sets per body part per week. So if you're going to emphasize your quads or your hamstrings, you want to be able to notice what you did in the previous meso or the previous sort of block of training. And aside from being in a surplus so that you're gaining muscle, you want to make sure that you are doing bare minimum equivalent or slightly more volumes for a particular body part. So if in the last meso you averaged 6 sets a week, that puts you on the lower end of things in terms of hypertrophy training. So in this next meso, maybe we want to make sure that we're averaging, 8 to 10. So you could do this in an auto-regulated fashion, you could do this in a linear fashion, but making sure that if you're trying to gain muscle and you're in a surplus, that your volumes correspond with an increase that is going to be to your benefit. So you want to quantify your training volumes. Number four thing you want to quantify is your sleep duration. Now notice I didn't say have a fancy sleep tracker or anything like that. I think the most important variable for sleep is going to be just overall sleep duration. Why do I think that it's the most important thing? Well, because it's easy to modify otherwise. If you wake up and you are tired, if you wake up and you are extremely low energy, those are good indicators and signals that you are either not getting enough sleep or your sort of sleep routine leading up to sleep can and should be modified a bit. If you think you're getting away, if you're a person who gets away with 6 hours of sleep and yet you are tired all day and overly caffeinating yourself, that's a pretty good indicator, or those are pretty good indicators that you aren't actually getting restful sleep and you need to make an adjustment. Similarly, whether you are gaining or losing weight, sleep is going to be one of those crucial variables, probably more crucial in a deficit, because it is going to be used to offset some of that fatigue you accumulate by dieting, by moving around quite a bit more. If you're not getting enough restful sleep, again, quantity, 7 to 9 hours, something in that ballpark. If you are not quantifying that and you are not noticing that, you can't modify that, and it's one of the more important variables. Last thing that I would want to quantify are my steps and or cardio output. Now, do you have to absolutely track this? No, you don't really have to track it, but it is a useful thing to have from your off season into your preparation or cutting sort of phases of your dieting, because if you know you're getting generally on average 6,000 to 8,000 steps a day, that gives you a good idea of your average activity level whenever you're not trying to cut and or diet, and you're able to move from that. So if you're at 6,000 steps, you can make more gradual of an increase in those steps to, like, let's say 8 or 9,000, as opposed to just ballparking and automatically increasing to 10,000 steps a day. I mean, you could go to 10,000 steps a day, but if you were only at 5,500 or 6,000, let's say you have a desk job or something like that, you generally just don't move around at all, why would you want to just double your steps right off the bat? There are time and a place for that, but if you're quantifying throughout the year, and it's easy enough to do with any simple fitness tracker, then you can make more gradual and actionable steps in terms of your step count, and then also in the additions of cardio that you want to do. So quantifying your steps. So why do we want to track more than the things that I've outlined? Now, the things that I've outlined are really actionable and effective things to track in terms of changing your body composition. That's what this channel is all about. But why do people begin tracking more things than that? Why do we think we're elite CrossFit athletes or elite weightlifters or things like that, and we need to track our HRV? Well, I think the number one thing for me, FOMO and novelty, so fear of missing out, I think inbuilt in us evolutionarily and psychologically. Once something comes out that a lot of people are utilizing, we have a fear, and I think it's an unspoken fear. It's sort of an unconscious fear of missing out on this new thing that could be beneficial to us. And I think that's very normal. Similarly, novelty is a thing that we are all sort of hardwired to crave. We crave novel environments, we crave novel people, novel interesting people, novel books. I mean, if we didn't crave novelty, we would just watch the same thing over and over and over again. However, to go against that argument, I do tend to watch a lot of the same shows over and over again, but ignore that. So on average, we crave novelty and we don't want to miss out. And then lastly, personality-wise, someone who is highly conscientious, detail-oriented, type A, these are the type of people who are going to want to track all the variables. Once they notice change by tracking certain variables, they inevitably are going to want to track everything. So I think this combination of FOMO, novelty, and personality types is going to get you an individual who is going to want to track more than the variables that actually get you moving in a direction, because once they've made a change in the positive direction by tracking just a few things, they're just going to want to track some more because they think they're getting more and more out of it. But I don't believe that to be the case. That's just my opinion. So track only the variables that move the needle on your performance significantly. And then number two, and I think this is the most important step, only add additional variables that allow you to take actionable steps towards your goals or the direction you're heading in. So before buying a Whoop or something like that, ask yourself three things. How is this going to change my behavior? Is that behavior change going to move the needle towards my goals? And then number three, is there a cheaper way to quantify the thing that I'm trying to get at so that I don't have to make this purchase, so that I don't need to spend my money on something that I could just get by tracking my sleep for a few days? Last thing I'll say here is utilize weekly, quarterly, and yearly reflections to check to see if the variables you are tracking are actually having a meaningful impact on your life. So if you begin tracking something and you notice that you aren't making any meaningful changes based on the information, cut it out, move it away. If you find that weighing yourself, let's say daily, is causing you significant amounts of distress over and above the benefit that you're getting, cut it out. Don't track it anymore. Similar for tracking your sleep or things like that. If variables are causing you emotional, mental distress, and they're not moving you towards your goals, why have it? Ditch it. Take what's useful, leave the rest. Now, in the next episode, we're going to go over a bunch of the variables that I think are important that can't necessarily be quantified. So if you're interested in that, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next episode.